Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we are in the 2022 Chevy Camaro 1LT. Oh my goodness, this is a very fine specimen that's in high demand. It goes for $28,000, weighs approximately 3,300 pounds, coming out with a inline 4 turbocharged, pushing out 275 horsepower, 295 foot-pounds of torque, and this is the direct competitor to the other car I reviewed, the first ever car review I did on this channel, which was actually, or one of the first reviews, which was a Ford Mustang Eco-Boost. So how does this compare? Direct competitor, let's find out. We're gonna be focusing more on driving dynamics, though, although I will say some things on the interior, which is that the Mustang definitely has a nicer interior, okay? Just to start with that, this CarPlay screen is very small, okay? And despite what she says, guys, the size does matter at least a little bit. And it's also pointing down. Like, why is it not pointing towards me? Why is it facing down? There's no one's looking from the screen down here up. Kind of weird, all right? So, not super impressed with the interior compared to the Mustang. It's a decent interior, but you don't really care about that. You care about the driving dynamics, right? That's why you're here. And that is where this Camaro truly shines, even this base 4-cylinder. Let me explain. This has a super rigid chassis, and it shows. This car is, the suspension is not super compliant, not super stiff. The chassis is very rigid, and as a result, the car is comfortable enough while maintaining stupidly good levels of grip, even with these crappy tires. So overall, from a performance aptitude chassis perspective, it really knocks it out of the park. But there are many things that are holding this car back at this price point, and that's actually why I would not recommend buying this for the $27,000 to $28,000 that it's going for base price before you put on any options. Now, again, this is the 4-cylinder turbocharged. You can also get a V6 or a V8, obviously the V8 being the most desirable, but I hear good things about the V6 as well. Inline 4 sounds like a vacuum, has a very stereotypical turbocharged characteristic, meaning that it really loses steam in the last 1,000 RPM. It just dies off. And there's a good amount of lag as well. The throttle response is not nearly as linear and immediate as you would want in a sports car like this. In fact, the chassis is really the thing that stands head and shoulders above the rest of this car, and everything else holds it back. So let me explain. The steering. Steering is very precise, but feel is definitely lacking, and it has this kind of weird motor calibration, or however they programmed it. You can almost like feel it working. There's at certain parts of the steering, at certain parts of steering input, you will actually feel it become lighter and heavier. You can feel the motors kind of working, which I really don't like. It's very hard to get as much feedback and information when it's making these on the fly changes to the resistance to the weighting. So not a fan of that, but it is very accurate. I'll give it that. Now, I've driven up and down this road now. It's like the 4th time in this car, and I'm pretty surprised by its grip. The car is definitely neutral, leaning towards understeer. It's very challenging to get this to power oversteer. There have been some corners where I really mashed into the brakes and rotated a little bit, just on that weight transfer to the front. But I don't like doing that too hard, too aggressively on public roads, because it's harder to catch that in case you mess up versus just power oversteer. So with power oversteer, very challenging to actually get it to step out. I've had very slight couple degree slip angle, nothing more than that on this road. It's also a tighter road, of course. And on the downhill, we're not going to be getting as heavy on the throttle, because these brakes, they do fade. I got them a little bit toasty last time I went down, so I got to go light. Yeah, see? So the most frustrating thing about this car is the transmission. It is an 8-speed automatic, and they now have a newer 10-speed on the higher levels that I hear is much better. But this 8-speed slush box is, it's just, it doesn't have any redeeming qualities if I'm being honest. I have to wait half a second between inputs to get actual gear change. At least it holds the gear for me when I have it in manual mode. So that's, I guess that's a redeeming quality. But both downshifts and upshifts are painfully slow. And it's very conservative. It will not let me downshift when I should be able to, because it's telling me that, see, like, right? Okay. It just barely let me shift a second there. When you leave it in automatic mode, it will short shift even when you're foot on the floor gunning it. It'll shift around 55 or maybe 6,000 RPM, 1,000 RPM before redline. But again, with a turbocharged engine, it tends to die in that last 1,000 RPM anyways. Now in terms of the inputs, steering weight is pretty heavy. The gas and brake feel a little bit lighter than I would want in a car like this. The throttle is also harder to modulate, in part because it is a laggy 4-cylinder turbo. And the brake pedal, I mean, the brakes are gonna fade. I mean, what do you want me to say? This is a base trim, not sporty at all. So the brake pads aren't really impressive at all. They're kind of just the standard economy stuff you would expect in any vehicle like this. God, that view though. I love San Diego. What a beautiful place. Now, in terms of how this car makes you feel, here's why it's a mixed bag with this car. If you got a 6-speed manual and you got a better engine, then you're already taking care of two of the larger deficits of this car right off the bat. I will also say though that this car handles its weight very well. It's 3,300 pounds. It feels like it's, I would expect it to be 3,100-ish. It is light on its feet. It is very planted, very level, very well done by Chevy with this car's chassis. Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's not playful. It's not playful at all. I have to work so hard to kick the tail out. And that's bringing us back to how this car makes you feel. I wouldn't buy this car at $28,000. Now, compared to the Mustang driving dynamics are not nearly as good. The engine there is also, with the Eco-Boost, is similarly flawed. But the Mustang at least has a nicer quality interior. It feels a little bit more comfy GT. It has better visibility. This is like a cave in here. I feel like the seating position as well, the pedals are almost too far back. I like how much the steering wheel telescopes. It's pretty far away from the dash, but I can't get my feet far enough. It feels like my whole body is sitting pretty far back in the cabin, which is not ideal from a driving ergonomics perspective. So the Mustang is more comfy. It's a little bit more of a GT car, at least the Eco-Boost trim that I drove, and you can see that video right up here. But if you want something that is also very competent, but more playful, why not go with a BRZ or an 8.6? Because those two cars, they are not nearly as planted as this, right? They are much more playful. Their engine is naturally aspirated 4-cylinder, and they're rated at 230, which a lot of people believe is underrated, probably closer to actually 250. This makes more power, more torque. This car also weighs substantially more, 600 pounds more. So as a result, how light and quick a car feels is a function of both the power and the weight. And this car doesn't feel faster than a GR86 or a BRZ. And those cars, they purposely put primacy tires, very low grip tires, so you can slide it around, have some fun. And I love that. Those cars have actually more usable back seats than this. I never thought I would say that another car has more usable back seats. But these ones in the back, they're so high up that if you're above something like 5'6", your head's touching the ceiling. Very unusable. The trunk in this is also tiny. So the GR86 and BRZ twins, they're more usable. I think the interior quality on the newer generation is far superior to this as well. The visibility is better. I think the styling is better. That's a very subjective thing though, so you may feel otherwise. And practicality. So those have much more cargo room and the back seats fold down so you can actually put big things in there. Whereas with this car, it feels like you either have to get the track package, the 1LE, which you can get on the 4-cylinder, or upgrade to the V6 or the V8. But please do get the manual transmission because, well, at least not this 8-speed. Maybe the 10-speed is a lot better, but this 8-speed is just, it's no bueno. It is very frustrating to work with. Overall, if you want a really competent chassis, driver-focused, this is great, but it's not going to be as comfortable day-to-day compared to some of the other options. But at this $28,000 price range, you know, you have such a solid foundation, such a solid chassis, but the other things that are complementary to that, the transmission, the engine, they really hold it back. So either, my suggestion is get a competitor that has a different skill set, a different set of strengths and weaknesses, or get a better trim, because these are very capable cars, but not in the base automatic inline 4 turbo option, obviously. Anyways, my friends, I hope you found that video helpful. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Much love, and I'll see you guys in that next one. God, this engine sounds like a vacuum cleaner.